All right, let's move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars. They just recently fired their first-year head coach, Urban Meyer, on Wednesday evening, which ended a very uneventful tenure with the franchise after only 13 games that Urban Meyer lasted. Owner Shad Khan said this following the dismissal of Meyer, quote, "As I state in October, regaining our trust and respect was essential. Regrettably, it did not happen," end quote. The offensive coordinator, Darrell Bevell, will be taking over as the interim head coach in the Jacksonville Jaguars. They currently hold a 2-11 record and have been eliminated from playoff contention so far, or already, excuse me. Ben, I'll start with you here. Do you think Urban Meyer should get another coaching opportunity in his career? Or, excuse me, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Do you think he will get another opportunity? Excuse me.
Do I think he'll get another opportunity? Yes. Will it be from a top program or even an NFL team? Probably not. I think he will get offers from some splashy college openings that maybe come in the next couple years, especially programs that are kind of on the downward trajectory. But will it be from a big team? Especially, I don't think he would have necessarily got offers from USC or Oklahoma that were open a couple weeks ago after all this news that came out about how he treated his team and his players. But if you look at his winning pedigree at Florida and at Ohio State prior to this, he has been able to lead a locker room, specifically in college. It leads me to believe that in the NFL, it just didn't translate and he won't get a coaching opportunity there. But in college, I definitely think it happens, especially you've seen what he's done as a recruiter, too, with Ohio State, all the talent that he continuously brought into that program. I think smaller schools and teams that are, like I said, on a downward trajectory will look to kind of bring that part of his game to their programs. So, like I said, I mean, the top college programs right now either just hired new coaches or have their set anyway. So not necessarily like those jobs will be coming open, but I think you could see in the future, in the next couple of years, if an opportunity came available, he would take it. But I don't necessarily know what his plan is anyway, because he already retired once from Ohio State due to health issues, and he didn't necessarily look like he was all that into it in Jacksonville. So even if he does get an opportunity, I don't necessarily know that he'll take it. I know he wants to get out of the house. His family's he's all older, so it gives him something to do. But he has dealt with a lot of health issues, more specifically over the last 5 or so years. And I don't necessarily know, even if he got another one after how this one went, if he would necessarily take it.
Okay. Yes, Urban Meyer has had plenty of success on the collegiate level. He compiled a 187-32 record, 3 national championships. We get it. However, this dude, there is not one legitimate college president out there that would hire Urban Meyer after this. He doesn't. There's obviously illegitimate presidents out there that would. But in my opinion, he is done on the NFL level completely. And that was a failed experiment from day one. And I don't think he will get another opportunity. I'm not letting Shad Khan off the hook here either. Okay? You knew his past history on the collegiate level. He got 31 players arrested in Florida, and then he covered up allegations against his assistant coach in Ohio State. So, no, I mean, he knew what he was getting himself into. I mean, he must have thought he was going to strike lightning in a bottle or something like that, because this is a disaster. I mean, the thing is, this is so bad. Urban Meyer is probably one of the biggest liars and frauds there is in the National Football League and just in general as a person. He's not even a good person, let alone a coach. Now, obviously, before the whole NIL deal and all that stuff, on the collegiate level, you have power as a coach because you're coaching a bunch of 18, 19, 20-year-olds that their dream is to get to the National Football League. You have power over that. Urban Meyer is someone that likes to hold power. He's like someone that he likes to intimidate and use threatening tactics. But dude, you're in the National Football League. These are grown men that have families and are receiving paychecks. You cannot intimidate people that are 35 years old. He thought he could just take his college football mentality and transition that in the National Football League. That's not working. The National Football League is we, not me. He's so obsessed with power, and he lacks accountability so much. I mean, they were 2-11, and I never once heard him in a press conference saying, I'm going to take blame for this loss. No, he was constantly pointing fingers at his assistant coaches, calling them losers, yelling at Marvin Jones, leaving him in the facility. I mean, the latest one is Josh Lambo during the preseason when he allegedly kicked them during that. I mean, this is ridiculous. And I think the one that really got me, we'll even go through the timeline, shall we? I mean, the beginning of the season when he was hired, not even 1 month in, he hires a strength and conditioning coach named Chris Doyle from Iowa, who was basically a racist towards black players who basically intimidated them and used tactics. That was your first mistake. Then you bring in Tim Tebow. Love Tim Tebow. Much respect for him. But you have him at the tight end position who he has never played that before. So I don't get that either. And then the last one that was the icing on the cake for me was when you lose to Cincinnati on Thursday Night Football, you decide to stay with your grandkids and not fly home with the team. And social media reports are circulating and turns to find out that you were at a bar hooking up with some people and then never regained the trust of your team. That was an absolute disaster. This was an absolute embarrassment of an experiment. And I'll talk more who they should hire next. But, Mickey, I'll have you go.
Well, one thing that I look for, you're exactly right with all that. But another thing is, one thing you look for in an NFL head coach, in every great NFL head coach, Bill Walsh, he brought the West Coast offense to the San Francisco 49ers. Bill Belichick, just an unbelievable defensive mind. He's a great GM, too. He does both jobs at an unbelievably high level. Every great NFL head coach brings something unique to the table. What is Urban Meyer's uniqueness? He is a very good recruiter. He is awesome at recruiting, and I don't want to call it a good culture because it's obviously not a good culture, but when you're winning at Ohio State every single year and you're winning titles, winning creates good culture. And he kind of inherited that situation, and he set, he didn't ruin that good culture or whatever. He didn't bring anything unique. Like Kyle Shanahan, he's an unbelievable offensive line. Sean McVay, unbelievable offensive line. You can't bring a good recruiting mentality into the NFL because you don't recruit in the NFL. You draft. You got to be able to evaluate talent. You got to be able to know where your funds are going. You got to know financial stuff. And it's just it's baffling to me. It was baffling to me when they hired him. Like, what does this guy bring to the table that a Eric Bieniemy or a I can't think of any other names off the top of my head.
I got you.
But what Kellen Moore? Like what does he bring to the table that these other guys do not? And it's nothing. It's nothing. And these guys have great offensive minds or great schematics or whatever. So I think that this was a failed experiment from day one. Not to toot my own horn, but I called this. I called this from day one.
I mean, you wouldn't be the only one, so don't worry about it.
I didn't think it would be this bad, but
none of us did.
Yeah.
But I will say this: Trevor Lawrence was projected to have the talent of John Elway. That's what all those analysts said, basically from college football to the NFL draft. Basically, that's what all those analysts say. Trevor Lawrence has regressed under Urban Meyer's watch. He has actually gotten worse as the season progressed. And I find that really hard to believe because Urban Meyer decided he thought he was so good at his job because he was winning. That's the problem. So he continued to focus on himself as opposed to focusing on the team and the development of Trevor Lawrence, and somehow, some way didn't know that James Robinson was on the bench. I don't understand that either. But what I will say, though, is this. Shad Khan, you hire Urban Meyer. Why didn't you decide to hire Jim Caldwell?
Caldwell?
Yeah. The last time I checked, he developed Peyton Manning in Indianapolis. And also, when he went to Detroit, he was there for 4 seasons. He had 3 playoff appearances in 4 seasons. He developed Matthew Stafford and was wrongly fired. This dude has a proven track record in the National Football League and developing quarterbacks. So I didn't understand why he wasn't even applicable or a candidate for the job. So, I mean, he must have thought that Urban Meyer was the next best thing.
I have another name for you.
Sure.
That I think is even better than Jim Caldwell.
Sure.
That's a really good point, and I see it. I think Jim Caldwell is a little too old school for a head coaching job right now. I think he should absolutely have an offensive coordinator job and everything.
Okay.
But the name that I really like, that's kind of exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Quarterback whisperer, Joe Brady. Wrongly
Ooh.
fired as well.
Yes.
Wrongly fired. He was given an awful offensive line in Carolina. Bad quarterback play. Very mediocre wide receiving room, below average receiving room, and no help defensively, and an awful offensive line. And he was fired just a couple of weeks ago by the Carolina Panthers. I think he should get a head coaching job because he developed Joe Burrow in a single year. He flipped his career on its head, and Joe Burrow became the number 1 overall pick.
You're right.
Joe Brady's the guy. I gotta assume he wants to stay in the NFL, and I think one good year as an offensive coordinator will get him a head coaching job.
Ben, do you have any last-minute remarks?
I love the Joe Brady comment, and I think the way that Matt Rule and the Carolina Panthers have looked in their last 2 weeks after that bye when he was fired kind of proves that it was not all on Joe Brady. I mean, someone had to be the scapegoat, sadly, and Joe Brady became that guy. But the way that circus has kind of gone on, especially the last week with Carolina, where they kept switching quarterbacks. I mean, Cam and PJ Walker switched spots, I believe, 2 different times, getting benched and then going back into the game. It proves that entire organization is kind of just a clown show right now, and that Matt Rule may not necessarily be as good as he thought, which proves that it was not all on Joe Brady. And if you just look at the pedigree and the fact that, like you said, Mickey, he developed Joe Burrow into who's going to now be one of the best quarterbacks of the future in a single season at LSU, I totally think he should be given another shot. Even if it's not in a head coaching role, still bring him into Jacksonville in some form to give him a shot to develop Trevor Lawrence, because it's not necessarily like Jacksonville's not a great team, but there are multiple occasions where Trevor Lawrence has been given time to throw and he just hasn't figured it out. He needs a new voice in the locker room, new voice on the sidelines, and Joe Brady could very well be that guy.